Hey there, magical experimenters. Taylor Ellwood here, and welcome to the show. If you're new to this channel, please go ahead and click subscribe, and then go ahead and click the notification bell. If you're a frequent flyer here, feel free to leave comments. So I thought today I would explore the topic of go. Just still getting used to the lighting of the new place. Today, I thought I'd explore the topic of revisiting older magical workings that you've done. And really, for some people, they'll kind of do a magical working, and once it's done, it's done, and perhaps they never need to revisit it. I'm the kind of person where I've set up magical workings where I've literally had these magical workings running for decades, to the point that I've even forgotten about some of the magical workings that I've done over the years. And recently, why I came up with this particular topic is that I had someone point out to me that basically there was an older magical working that I had done that was still running that I had forgotten about. And I was like, oh, wow. It really hit me like, oh my gosh, that it was actually my magical partner. She pointed this out. She's like, there's something I'm noticing, and we looked at it, and I'm like, oh, it's because of this older magical working. And so it was interesting because I realized like I'd put this working into place when I was 18 years old. I'm 45 now. So that kind of gives you an idea that's almost 30 years later. And this magical working that I put into place a long, long time ago, still working, still performing its thing. It just become a background program. That's how I approach a lot of my magical workings. I basically create what would be considered a background program where they're running in the background. They're set up to continually be fueled by specific triggers or things along those lines. And it works great in one sense. I mean, it's a very effective and streamlined approach to doing magic. It's something that I've always thought of an approach. It kind of puzzles me, honestly, that a lot of people don't do it that way. What I see with a lot of people's magical workings is they'll kind of do a once and then done kind of thing. Like they'll do the magical working and then it's done. But to my thought, like one of the most strategic and tactical approaches that you can take with magic is to really consider, like, if I'm going to put all this effort into creating a magical working, how do I set it up so that it's running for the long term? And yeah, okay, Shasta, you mentioned you do things like that. That's cool. So, I mean, I'm not the one who does it, obviously, but I think it's really important to set up magical workings that way. But at the same time, I also think it's important to revisit those magical workings at some point. Because sometimes what you set up when you were younger is not what you want running now, or you want to tweak or change it. And if you don't realize that, if you've kind of forgotten about it, and I mean, I've done enough magic at this point, and I've come up with enough magical innovations and ideas that I've forgotten some of them. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years now. It's not hard to forget, shall we say. It becomes one of those cases where you are like, oh, well, I came up with this magical working a long time ago, and hey, it's working great. It's working so well that I've forgotten about it because it's in the background and I haven't even had to think about it. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, wow, that's a really good idea. It's a really streamlined approach to magic. And hey, I'm all for that. Like, I will tell you, like, anytime you can accomplish that kind of thing, it's a great way to do things. But sometimes realizing like, well, maybe there's something going on in the background here that I'd forgotten about. Maybe I should revisit that is important. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to keep a magical journal. Because that helps you. I'll admit, unfortunately, in my case, I have lost some of my magical journals over the years. I have like some of my earliest ones, but I have a period of time where I am missing some of those journals, which is unfortunate. I wish I still had them, because there was a lot of good content in there, but it's gone. And so I've done a better job. I mean, this is why I do my online blog and everything. That essentially is my magical journal at this point. But it's a good example of why it's so important to keep these kinds of things, to keep a journal, because when you have a journal, then you can look back on these things and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I did this or I did that. But I think the other thing too is that, maybe just sometimes do a real check-in. Like, what did I do a long time ago? What are some of the ongoing effects in my life? Do I want to continue to have those effects? Like one example that I have is that's an ongoing effect in my life is I created a long time ago. The very first servitor I ever created is an opportunity servitor. It basically makes me aware of different opportunities, and it's still working away. I revisit it and tweak it on occasion because sometimes I'm realizing maybe I don't want the specific type of um, opportunity, so how can I change that? So I mean, that's a good example there of something that you might keep running, but you'll tweak it because you'll realize things have changed. Like who I was when I made that entity, in my early 20s is not who I am now. So I think this understanding this, that sometimes you need to revisit what you've done in the past can be really helpful. And this also applies to magical workings that aren't necessarily running in the background. I mean, you could have a magical working that you've done a long time ago and it was a once and done type of thing, but you still might want to revisit it because maybe you'll get some inspiration for things that you're currently doing now. That's another reason to revisit older magical workings. We shouldn't forget where we come from. Of course we do sometimes, but we should ideally try not to forget where we come from, because when we're able to look back on where we were and what we were working on and explore what we can do with it, it can make a significant difference in the work that we're doing now. Right now, in the last few months, I've been doing a lot of work around space-time magic, and I'm excited because this is going to go into a new book on space-time magic at some point. But I'm going through and I'm exploring. I'm kind of considering, like, what did I do before with space-time magic as well. Partially because I don't want to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. Redo what I've already done. But partially just because it's good to kind of look at, like, well, here's where I was, and here's where I'm at now. I think that that's a really important thing to consider. When you have a corpus of work available to you, you have all this background, it makes a significant difference. Same thing with, like, elemental magic. I've just finished chapter 3 of Walking with Elemental Spirits. So yay me, book is coming along. And I'm going to be working on chapter 4 this weekend. But it's been interesting to revisit the work that I've done there and to make some changes. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to doing is creating some elemental magic portals for specific elements that I've been working with, that are not the classic 5 elements, as an example. And these are things that I'm going back to, because I went back to, like, what I originally did with the 5 classic elements, and I'm like, oh, here's some things that I could replicate and add to the current work that I'm doing that would probably be really powerful and could also be a powerful teaching aid for people who read that book. So these are just a couple of examples of why you want to revisit your older work, because when you are able to look back on what you've done before, it helps you appreciate where you're at and what you might want to change about where you're at. It also helps you see where you want to go moving forward with your magical work. So that you're not replicating what you've already done, or if you are replicating what you've already done, you're doing it from a place of inspiration and you're seeing how you can improve on it. I mean, that's always a key thing. Like, what can we do to improve on the magical workings that we're doing? And I think that's a huge and significant part of this kind of work. So these are just some of the things that I would put out there for you to consider. And I would love it, if you guys, after watching this video, if you have, comments about some of your older magical workings and what those older magical workings have taught you, please feel free to drop those in the comments, and I'll definitely respond to them. And otherwise, I wish you guys a wonderful and happy Friday and an amazing weekend. Take care, and thank you for watching.